Welcome, BBCers, to episode number 227 of the Broken by Concept podcast, the number one solo queue educational and motivational podcast. We've got myself, Curtis, Charlie behind the camera, who does not have a camera, but he'll be chiming in as we go today. So we talked about we're going to be evolving the podcast. We're sort of experimenting with setups. We listened to feedback. We're back to, I think the top comment was literally saying the biggest shock was the switch of the positions. We're back in our normal positions because that just throws people off. Yep. Some people were saying it was unwatchable.
Yep. Some people said it's unwatchable. And I remember there was one comment that really just felt like a personal attack from Boke. So Boke, you know who you are. If you see him in the comments, attack him, get him back. And he was saying that because this black screen we have was unironed, had some wrinkles in it, it was unwatchable. So, Boke, we've actually got a nice little iron. We've ironed it, or at least had a crack at doing that.
Thank you for making me have to do that, Boke. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed ironing that.
Just for Boke. It was only for Boke.
Yeah, and good work, Charles, for doing that.
Props Shout out Charles.
Doing the grunt work. So we've also got Bruce Lee, Tom Brady, and Red Bull / Max Verstappen joining us here because we love competitiveness on this podcast. We love solo queue. We love climbing the rank ladder, which is what we're going to be starting with today. I would say split next year, 2025 League of Legends changes Riot have bestowed upon us. What we're going to do in the first part of this podcast is go through each of them one by one, discuss our thoughts, and it's going to be more the major changes that are going to affect people climbing the solo queue ladder, because again, that's what this podcast is all about. So, first one here, Curtis. We are back to one ranked reset a year. January. It's going to be resetting every single year.
The MMR. The rank, sorry. So, the rank reset, it's only now once instead of three times. Which, again, we've been very, very critical of, especially myself. The 3 splits. I mean, we thought at the very beginning, we thought, okay, maybe it has some positives or whatever, and it's just one of those things where in reality, right, in practicality, when you see it, it doesn't work, right? It was too much and people couldn't really make much progress because you're just going backwards every few months. So shout out to Riot, who actually listened to the community feedback. I think that was probably the biggest criticism of the 3, was the 3 splits. So that's amazing. The fact that they did listen. Now, you made a comment, Nathan. They didn't go from 3 to 2. Or kind of slowly, they went straight 0 to 100 from 3 splits to 1.
It's a very good sign that Riot are fast to listen to the community and make changes quickly. It's a testament to Riot again and the work that they do. It's fantastic. People always say that we're Riot fanboys on the podcast, but this is we're
Riot haters for one split, and now we're back. Supporting Riot again.
Well, again, I like to use the word we're critical of some changes, they're just pulling the rug back to one ranked reset a year. There still is 3 splits in terms of rewards. I think they call them seasons now. There's like season 1, 2, and there's like even parts in them. I really couldn't care less about the Victoria skins. It's cool, but I care about the competitiveness and the solo queue.
So the way it works, right, is, correct me if I'm wrong, let's say you're a gold, right, and for the first season, and then so you get a reward. Like
you'll be a gold Victoria skin.
So the thing we don't know is whether or not on like OPGG on the profile shows that you were gold split or season 1 2025, and then say you went to platinum, then you're platinum season 2 2025. I'm assuming like you would have still like on OPGG.
I assume it will, because it says here that there are 3 distinct seasons across the year. They each last around 8 patches, 16 weeks. And they're all themed, right? So there's like the Nexus split. So you probably will finish like a certain rank at the end of that, I keep saying split, season, but your rank just won't reset. That's the only difference.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing. So huge. Really, 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 really big, really positive. Glad they did that.
The other big thing is they mentioned, I don't know what this is going to look like, but they said they're reverting the numbers and the sort of the ranks back to what it was like in the 2022 season and before then. So this split 3 disaster that a lot of people have been going way down. MMR-wise, their rank, it's going to be more look like it was in past years. So again, don't know what that looks like, but it sounds like Riot have also realized that well, you were really critical about the communication because people lost their minds. Like, I was Diamond 4. Why am I struggling at Emerald 4 games now?
I mean, we know as well how emotional people can get when it comes to rank. I mean, all of us, right? I mean, and if you have no way of objectively measuring
progression
in League of Legends, then it's so it's already so hard to climb the rank ladder. And so, look, we spoke at length about this. I don't want to go on about it anymore. The changes have been made or they're coming. So that's the main positive here.
All right, next big change here. Getting into the nitty-gritty details. Rift Herald is now spawning at 16 minutes. Baron is now pushed to 25 minutes, and there is a new objective monster called Atakhan.
Wait, so Grubs is still 6?
Yes, Grubs is still 6.
Grubs is still 6. Rift Herald 16. Atakhan is 20, and Baron is 25.
Yes, and this Atakhan thing has 2 forms. And it's quite tanky. It's like 9,000 HP, and one gives you a Guardian Angel buff for the entire team if you kill it. Now, this Guardian Angel buff is not a normal Guardian Angel where you just die in the fight. You actually resurrect. It's like an Akshan passive. So it's sort of, to be honest. It's cool for like tempo and like getting back on the map and stuff like that, but it's not as powerful because people started losing their minds around the GA. Any comments on that, Curtis?
Well, okay. Well, one thing I will say, it said that particular iteration of Atakhan spawns it spawns in the games where there's less damage dealt, right? So I'm just trying to pass that information for a second, right? So if you have a game that is less damage, you would assume that you have more scaling, less interactive laners, right? You would think of maybe, just traditional, more scaling laners. In that case, GAs potentially would actually be more meaningful. Even if it's not a proper GA, it's more like an Akshan passive. That is still very meaningful because think about it. If there hasn't been a lot of action up until that point, and then boom, everyone's getting to their first fight, and then no one's dying, that's really going to elongate games. That's actually going to make it those games where, again, scaling champions are probably going to have more of a chance of getting into the mid to late game. So the way I'm viewing it, it's kind of ensuring that people who pick scaling champions, not ensuring, I don't think that's the right word. It's helping the likelihood or increasing the likelihood of scaling champions dragging that game out to the mid to late. What do you think? I mean, I'm just spitballing here. That's like, because I'm like, why would they make it the less damage iteration of, the games where there's less damage giving the GA rather than the one that's high damage? You know what I mean?
I thought it was the high damage one.
No,
it's the low damage.
It's the low damage. Yeah.
Okay. My initial thought as well there is like really getting into the details here. Champions that don't have big ults as well back on the map for the fight again. Because you can think about it, that also as well might help them a little bit. Think about it, because it's just going to be a fight and then theoretically a fight back to back, especially if people are dying. Because remember, it's at 20 minutes. People are dying around Baron, like the Baron time. Like, let's say the fight, let's say you get the buff at, because think about it, by the time everyone resets and stuff, it's going to be 22, 23 minutes. It could be literally Baron fight into an extended Baron fight for like 2-3 minutes.
Oh, you were saying, so Atakhan fight.
Yeah. And everyone resets.
And then everyone resets. You get the GA.
And then now people play for the Baron at 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I think the biggest change here is that what Nathan's saying is true. It's actually going to be such a game of neutral objectives. Imagine a situation where the Herald spawns. We're fighting Herald at 15.
Well, Grubs, actually. We have Grubs first.
Okay, we're fighting Grubs. Then we're fighting Herald. Then we're fighting a Dragon. Then we're fighting Atakhan. And then Baron's up.
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot going on.
Where's the lull state? You're actually fighting 5 objectives, technically, in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm going to talk about the specifics as well with Jungle as well. I like this change how they push Grub back 2 minutes the Herald back to 16 minutes, because the way games sometimes play out where sometimes Grubs isn't taken for a while, and if it's not taken by 9 minutes, the second Grubs is actually sort of sometimes just not taken. There will be a fight over it, but no one will actually get the Grubs, and then you don't have an opportunity to fight again. It's like, let's say people go back and forth and die, because the second Grub spawn, the Grubs are actually relatively tanky. They take a while to kill. So I like that. Now it seems like there's definitely going to be 2 Grubs fights, but before there actually wasn't. So yeah, you're right, Charles. There's going to be fighter, and I completely forgot about the dragons as well, every 5 minutes. So yeah, talking about champs with long cooldowns on ults, it's going to be interesting for them. And I always think of it from a jungle perspective. Champs like Graves, Kindred and stuff, these champs, like Nidalee, these champs have already thrive, especially in high elo. That's just going to sort of accelerate, I think, maybe them even more. But I in general, I always like that Riot have always pushed, even from talking back all the way from season 3. Having people fight over things to prevent that whole situation where you could sit on the towers and wave clear to like 50-minute games. They want games to be, they really want games to be ending by the the 20, 28, 30-minute mark.
Exactly, it makes games more. If you actually think about it, that's what objectives are. That's the only purpose. The main purpose of objectives is literally to incentivize people to get out of their lane, away from their tower, and to fight
and create chaos.
And that's what makes League so different. Because if you think about it, right? If we were there, right, back in the day, season 2, even season 3, games become a snooze fest very, very, very quickly. And the last thing you want is an Anivia sitting under tower wave clearing and dragging the game to 90 minutes.
From my reviews, so the 16 to 20-minute mark, people lose their mind as a jungler because it's a very boring time if there's no objective up. If people literally not doing anything for literally 2 minutes, people panic and force things. Like, people lose their minds just doing nothing for 2 minutes, right? So, from what I've observed.
Well, what's interesting, okay, so we've had this big discussion now about you have these 2 iterations of Atakhan. They give you these buffs. One of them gives a GA. One of them gives, they drop those extra plants or some shit. That's kind of like bar chimes, right?
Reading it from the article, like, it drops blood roses across the map around where deaths happen that give experience and permanently stacking adaptive force.
Just like a bard chime, essentially.
But it gives it for your whole team, not just the person that picks it up. So yes, just like a bard chime.
Okay, so we established that you get these buffs, whatever, and it's quite tanky. But when it comes to changes, it's way more complicated than meets the eye because, obviously it has this amount of HP, whatever. But what you got to factor in as well is how much damage is it dealing? And I saw one of the Atakhans has like a draining function. So even though it has a set amount of HP, that might be deceivingly tricky to potentially kill because of the draining function. So when we're talking about the effectiveness or the amount of buffs on what a particular neutral objective gives, it's all relative. If it takes ages to get, maybe you're saying, okay, well, maybe it's actually better for champions that don't want skirmishes because they can trade them off. They can use that time to trade it off and get towers on the other side of the map or whatever the hell it is. Like maybe it creates this meta of like, again, constantly trading off of objectives in a weird way.
Trading objectives for tier 2 towers. Like that's what you found this year with Herald, right? You didn't really care about it that much.
Yeah, I was trading that off all the time. And again, there's been this massive emphasis for, at least in my games, getting tier 2s. If you can get a tier 2, I say, the game is like, not over, but it's huge. Like if you're a solo laner that gets solo gold on a tier 2, the game it's massively in your favor. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the practicality, of these objectives are. How long is it going to take? How much damage does it deal? And I was mentioning before off camera about the dragons when they first came, the elemental dragons. And I remember trying to do a Cloud Drake when they first came out. I'm like, holy shit,
chopping you down.
This thing's doing damage. Yeah. This thing is doing damage. And still to this day, actually, especially coaching in bronze, silver, and even gold, even if you set up vision, you swept, it's a lot less threatening than it would be around something like a Baron or a Dragon, just because of, again, how the terrain, right? Think about this. I'm imagining you're sitting somewhere, let's say, I don't know. I don't know specifics, but let's say you're in that kind of
envisioning bot Tribush.
Yeah, bot Tribush, right? There's still so many angles, and again, you still have the lane.
And I guess it's easy to check that with poke abilities anyway.
Yeah. Again, I think that the real big thing that I want people to consider here is, again, how less committed you are into the river here. So look, obviously time will tell how that plays out. We don't know, but I think it's really interesting to see a neutral objective not that deep into the river. So yeah, really, really intrigued. Exciting. Very exciting.
So more things about objectives. You get a upgraded boots, a back. If you remember from, I don't know, season, what was it, 6 or something like that was the last time the upgraded boots you could buy. You get, only one team can get it, and there's 3 sort of objectives, I forgot what they're called, mechanisms you can get. There's 3 different versions. So it's first blood, first tower, and the team that gets the first 3 epic monsters. So if the first team that gets 2 of 3 of those gets the upgraded boots. And it's pretty nice. It's pretty good. I think the upgrade boots cost like $600.
$750?
Something like that. So they're going to be quite valuable. So that's pretty cool. Anything to comment on that, Cody? So again, it's sort of just about objectives, right? Like that's what the game is getting towards and fighting around those.
So again, at a high level though, what my mind comes to is that your champion either needs to thrive in terms of the chaos and the skirmishes. So champions like again, Aurora that have recently been released are going to thrive. Skirmish based mid laners, Ari, Aurora, Galio, these sorts of champions traditionally thrive a lot better. Akali, LeBlanc, these champions from a mid laner's perspective. But even just bigger picture, even you have those traditional skirmishes or champions that can do really, really well at trading off neutral objectives and can kind of shred towers. So they're the kind of two that, in my mind, at a very basic rudimentary level, might be good. What about junglers?
I don't know. I think that, even champions that are sort of alt-reliant, I still think the way the flow of the game can be, if anything, it puts more structure to the game to save your ults and playing your ults around these fights. I think it actually will be fine. I generally don't think it will just come to Riot wouldn't let this, where it just comes to the point where you can only play those champions in solo queue.
And even that is actually something Riot has done very well, by the way. I will say specifically this year, you could basically play any style.
Yeah.
Like you could play assassins, you could play mages. I mean, in junglers, you could play scaling, and you can play pretty early game. All of them are relatively viable.
Yeah, I mean, Shyvana went through a phase where she was broken for most of this year, and that's a pure ult-reliant champion. So
Karthus.
Yeah.
What do you make of the potential lack of complexity now? I've seen the argument made that League is just turning into a 5v5 game, right? There's no more side laning, no more creative macro plays. Just pure 5v5. What do you guys make of that?
This is a very good point. That is a concern. My immediate thing is, Charles, is that, what if, playing that mid-game, especially, the 16 to, 22-minute mark of, pushing out waves, because what happens if people just stop playing side lanes? The side lane component aspect of the game is so important. Honestly, that's a concern. I have nothing more to say.
I'm actually going to say something very different. I'm going to be a bit controversial here. I don't view League as a strategic game.
I see. You just view it as more of a fighting game.
Again, I think that League has always had this kind of veneer of being this strategic macro-oriented kind of game. And that's kind of been that's the old way of thinking. And I think the evolution of the game is that it's become less and less of a strategic game and more of a fighting-based game. And I think for good reason. I think it's genuinely... It's probably suits the more modern age audience, I would say, in a way, or wider audience. So I would say that definitely from a...
You're talking about Zoomers here, Curtis.
Zoomers, and just comparing it to a lot of other games. You just need action. You need shit to go down. And I will say, I just think that's just the nature of the game. It just does feel weird to have this game where you got to fight to kill people, but then you've just got to... You're not really going to be interacting with anyone and playing this very wide... I just don't think that it is... kind of suited to the MOBA style. At least that's my 2 cents. So look, I get it. I can understand that argument that we're losing the strategic flavor. But the way I view it is that the execution element of the game is so heavy, so dense. We don't need any more complexity from a strategic perspective. It's so difficult already to know which side lane wave to shove or to slow build or to ditch. That's we're not talking very crazy, complicated macro.
You think that's enough?
That is already so hard because your mental state is so overwhelmed. I'm just speaking from first-hand experience. The decision between do I slow build this? Do I last it? Do I freeze? Do I hard shove? Do I shove and move? Do I stay and call for hover? Or do I group? Or do I not to go to the side? That is not, we're not talking crazy macro, we're not talking advanced chess strategy. This is just a very basic decision in terms of what to do with the wave. But that within itself is not an easy decision. So the kind of the way I view it is League is not difficult from a strategic perspective if we're purely looking at it through the strategic lens, but the burden of execution is so goddamn high that it almost makes the strategy feel more complex than it is. That's kind of the way I view the game. So I think that as long as the game has new champions being added, again, there's new aspects to the map, et cetera, I don't think we'll ever feel the downside of the game being less strategic. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I can sort of see that. I can definitely see that argument. I guess when you said it, Charles, my first thought is always the high level, the pro play. But when Curtis talks about it, it's okay, it makes probably more sense for the general player base.
Yeah, just think about the general player base. That's, and even at the pro level, by the way, look, there is strategy. I'm not going to say there isn't, but it's strategy in a much more subtle way. The strategy actually, in my opinion, the majority of strategy in competitive is just in draft and team compositions. That's where the strategic element of the game actually lies. How do you develop a team composition whereby you're getting an advantage in the way those kits interact, and how do you leverage the advantages of your given your actual composition? That is the strategic element of competitive play, in my opinion. The rest of it is just skirmishing and execution and, tightening up and the consistency of all those details. So, yeah, interesting. Either way, I think a good question.
All right, next change. Nexus turrets can respawn. They respawn every 3 minutes. So if they die, they'll respawn in 3 minutes. What is our immediate reaction to this? How is this going to affect split pushes, Curtis?
Well, again, I think this is alluding to what Charlie was mentioning before. You're kind of lowering, the amount of strategic creativity that can be had, especially in the mid to late game. This one is actually very big. I mean, there's so many games that I'm in, even though it sounds ridiculous. I think there's a lot of games you're in that this is actually quite relevant, where you lose inhibs and then
I can't walk out of my base for, the pressure that you feel. It's just the Baron's up. I can't walk out of my base. I got to deal with the split pushes.
Well, especially with the amount of split pushes are in the game in top lane, right? There's a shit ton of Fioras.
I think it affects top laners the most. Like, it's a pretty reliable strategy to just die for a Nexus tower, respawn, do it again, and then the third time you end the game. So you've seen these games where Yorick do this, especially in the lower ranks. I see this all the time. Top lane reviews.
Saying that's literally their champion. That's how they win games.
It is how they win their games.
So
like
you're removing
Yurgot,
that.
Yorick, Fiora, Alawi. A lot of these champions do it, right? So it will be very interesting to see how they end games.
Yeah, I mean, Nathan, what do you think? Do you feel that this is for you? I mean, I don't want you to think about the wider player base. I think this is a very subjective thing. But for you personally, what do you think? How do you like it?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, Curtis, you know me. I'm a jungler that's really focused on the early game, closing out games cleanly. I'm going to close out a game, whether those respawn or not. I can see a couple of games where, maybe the comeback mechanics feels a little bit better, because some games just feel like you can't come back when you lose those Nexus towers against certain split pushes. Again, this is a thing that I have to see how it plays out, how it feels. But it's interesting.
I would actually say, for me, personally, I love it. Because the reason why I love it is that I'm always the one, because I'm super disciplined with the way I end games. I wouldn't, if I'm in a position, I always say this, if I'm in a position where I can get an inhib or Baron, I'm doing Baron. Because the Baron will lead to inhib, and the inhib won't necessarily lead to Baron. Sometimes it can, not always, especially if it's mid inhib.
Mid inhib, yeah.
So I'm super aware of it, because I've had so many painful experiences of failing to end a game properly that I will go out of my way to make sure I end the game properly. So I'm not going to be in a scenario, at least for me, very rarely am I going to be in a scenario where it's like, oh gosh darn it, we needed those Nexus towers to end the game. Like, I'm not going to be in a scenario where I have to I need to leverage that to win the game, just because that's my strength as a player. And if anything, I'm going to be on the other side needing those Nexus towers to respawn so I can leverage again my strategic, my strengths as a player to keep the game on going, and then find picks and get a creative way back into the game. So I think for me, because I'm disciplined with ending games, I think this benefits me as a player.
Yeah, I guess it depends on role. Top laners, not happy. Now that you say put it that way, I'm pretty happy with it.
Or again,
as a
think
jungler.
about it, if you're a tank player, or you're a player that tends to group and play more team fight oriented champions, you're probably happy with this change. If you're the split pusher, you're thinking, God damn it, this is definitely not good.
I will say, I actually think about this more. If you get Baron and you have a triple inhib, and you run into the enemy base and you Baron up all 3 waves, it doesn't really matter whether they have Nexus towers or not.
Respawn or not, right? Yeah, that doesn't matter, yeah.
But what it does mean is that team can probably leave the base to contest the Baron, maybe,
to not get to that point.
Losing the Nexus.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
It does reward what it does, if you think about it, right? Let's say you defend your base. Let's say you get siege on, you lose your inhibs, and they get your Nexus towers, and you ace them at the Nexus. And then you know how typically then the game stalls out because they can't end the game, and then you've cleared out all the minions, and then they have to wait for the next Baron. You're right. It helps that then because you should be rewarded for defending your base there. Think about it.
That's the reward.
Yeah, that's the reward. And now you're going to
I feel like I'm not rewarded for that. Yeah,
you're not rewarded. It's weird because you're just going to slowly lose the game anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to get the next rotation of the Baron, which you're never going to be able to contest because the inhibs and you have no Nexus towers. So it actually gives you kind of that second chance in the game, which I think, really, really good point, Charles. I liked it.
All right, next one here, talking more about top laners. We've got teleport changes. Teleport, I swear, gets changed every 3 months, honestly, at this point. First one, you turn like into a ball, so it went from a blink to like I don't know what you call it, a dash. You turn into like a ball. The change says the channel duration is reduced from 4 seconds to 3 seconds. Now dashes the target to the location after the channel instead of blinking like Hex Gates. Max travel time for base is 5 seconds. 4 for Unleashed. Can target minions and wards again.
Can target minions and wards again.
I think that means for the initial, because Unleash you could do that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Wow,
So there must be
interesting.
what was that like? So that was
That was the old school.
where they could TP to bot and stuff. Is that going to come back? Wait, you know when top laners could
Yeah.
TP to like bot?
Or actually, it was really OP back in the day because what you could do is you could not only TP to a minion, but you could cancel it. But now remember, you have to go through with it, right?
Yeah.
So now, from what that post looks like, is that they are they're bringing it back such that you can target the non-unleashed one.
You can target minions.
You can target minions and wards.
Very
again,
interesting.
Which is, when you think about it, it's not okay. So it is impactful, definitely, but not game changing. Because think about it, when you're actually going to be able to do that, or when it's relevant, is when you're level 6. Right? The mid lane, I'm just again speaking from a solo laner's perspective. You're not really going to be TPing pre-level 6 to a minion. Actually,
I mean, that was the case. That
was the case.
I had to deal with that.
Well, that does actually okay, so there's two main functions of TP.
Can we just confirm that, Charles, by the way? Can you look that up?
Yes, I am looking
you
that
confirm
up.
that? But in the meantime, if you think about TP now, right, the main way in the early game that is used is to get back to lane, right? Now, when they made it only to the towers and not minions, that actually made it harder, specifically for top laners, to get back in lane in time, such that sometimes they wouldn't be able to freeze the wave. So it actually made it hard. It made it easier for the opposition to punish people who were TPing back to lane, right? So for top lane, that is actually very significant. If you can TP to a ward, sometimes, or a minion, you can get there in time, hold the wave and pull the wave and prevent it from crashing onto the tower. Even just like 1 or 2 seconds or 3 seconds difference can change that altogether. So for lane now, that actually is very significant. The second one for TP is you would use it for counter ganks and shit like that, which wasn't really relevant now when they were for pre-unleashed TP, right? Because you couldn't go to minions and
Yeah, you can't TP the tower and go to the fight.
exactly right. But now,
what's
So,
that, Charles?
Okay, we've got some information here. So it's quite interesting because the teleport takes a very long time to arrive. And that's how they've justified allowing you to TP to minions and wards, because you're going to have like 7 seconds to respond. Because what happens is, because let's say you teleport to bot, which is the most obvious one, right? You have your channel time, which I think it said it was 4 seconds channel time, or 3 seconds channel time. But now you have the channel time plus the travel. So the travel time from top to bot is going to be 5 seconds.
Yeah,
So if you want to TP flank bot, they're literally going to see it and have 8 seconds to walk away.
Okay, that was my concern.
so it balances it out.
Yeah,
Okay, so that also makes sense for the top lane TP thing as well.
So what they've said is they really don't want TP to be a tool where you just TP back to lane. They hate that. They don't want it to be like a get out of lane free card or whatever. They want you to impact the map, but they want that to happen later. So like the further away you TP, the longer it's going to take. That's what I mean. But you can only get cancelled in the first half of the channel. Once you start flying through the air, you can't get cancelled anymore. You're
because
like
the channel's short, right?
The channel's shorter, but the travel time depends on how far you go.
Okay, I can see the theory here. This makes sense. I actually like this change a lot. So basically, if you're TPing from the other side of the map, it's super easy to react to. But if like the way I think about the TP, it's like the top laner might be hiding out of fog of war behind the fight or whatever, right? And gets there really quick, for a flank or something like that. But they have to be closer. You can't just be on the other side of the map. I think that's overall fantastic.
What it says is
it adds more strategic.
There's more strategic there.
It wants you to incentivize laners to stop taking teleport every single time, so that the time it takes to walk back to lane and TP back to lane is more similar. So because what happens a lot, just again speaking from a top lane perspective, this is the top lane podcast, is if you take Ignite and you solo kill your laner,
they're gonna come
in
back.
Some lane states, it can be a bad solo kill.
Bad, yeah.
Because
Even
they
in
TP
mid.
back and freeze.
That's legit in mid as well, though. In mid, if you're playing, I've seen this so many times where like a Diana, they like solo kill their laner, and then the enemy just TP's back, and you can't get the wave out. Like that actually happens in
all
mid.
the time in top lane. Like if you commit your flash ignite as a Garen to kill the guy, they TP back and freeze the wave, and you've lowered
Yeah, as a jungler, I have to always go to fix that. Like, even though my laner solo kills, they're in such a bad spot. I have to always go there as a jungler. It happens all the time.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of data here. I mean, obviously, a lot of this is just going to have to be filled out, but there's a lot of interesting stuff.
Well, also, by the way, the base. If you go back to that, Nathan, the base cooldown reduced from 6 minutes to 5 minutes. By the way,
That's
and
big.
then the unleash cooldown was reduced as well by about 30 seconds on the initial one. So, yeah, so that's actually quite significant as well. So again, it is one of those things I'll have to feel out. I can kind of see where they're coming from. It definitely adds another level of you need to be much more conscious about taking TP, which if you think about it historically, that's kind of the direction that they've gone. Like at the start, everyone was taking TP, right? Originally, because you could cancel it, you could go on anything. It was basically super low channel time and everything.
I mean, nowadays, I see 3 TPs in a lot. I've got a Ziggs with TP
Bot
bot,
goes bot, yeah.
mid TP and top TP nowadays.
TP is actually a very big reason as to why Mage is a viable bot lane, by the
Yeah.
way. So that could change quite a bit. Like, I don't know if I'd want to be playing Ziggs bot lane with Barrier.
Yeah,
That's a very good point.
It's actually really, really important because I play a lot of Ziggs. I play a lot of Mage's bot and Ziggs bot specifically. If you don't have TP, it's really hard because you need that first reset because you got and you need to come back at that tier or just get some sort of mana or get that first reset off, and then that kind of bridges the gap to get you to your lost chapter a lot of the time. So if you don't have TP, it hurts. And now, look, you probably are still going to have to take TP. It's just going to be a little bit easier to get punished, right? So yeah, very interesting.
The next change I wanted to talk about here, well, the last one, was they're introducing multiplayer practice tool. Now, this was a big gripe in the community for a long time. It was just sort of just annoying that you couldn't go into the practice tool and just train with someone, right? Like, that's, dodge skill shots. Can you do this? Can you get to this level? I want to see this damage. You can actually, I think this could be quite big. Let's sort of explore this. Okay, the first question I want to ask to you guys, when practice tool was initially released, do we think that the player base was improved significantly? Like, were people able to practice the Gragas? I think about like the Gragas flashy combo or the Lee Sin, insect and stuff like that. Did the practice tool? I just don't think about. Okay, let's differentiate between pro play and also regular play. Do you think it helped increase the mechanics of players? And did you see people use it or? What do you think?
I mean, I don't think you can even make that argument, even if I said, yeah, like how, right? Because there's so many other variables that play.
Like the time people got better at the game.
And there's more educational
Could have had
resources. You can't. I mean, what practice tool I think is the most useful thing? I mean, okay, so I'll say number one, it's really great for testing damages on builds. That's the big one, right? Because you can go into practice tool, you can load a specific build on a test dummy, and you can actually just straight up test damages. So that's number one. I think that's the most important thing with practice tool. The second one is that it's actually really, really good for like people just testing out a kit. So instead of loading into a full game, you can just go into the kit and just screw around with it. And that's actually what I do when a new champion comes out. The first thing I do is I go into practice tool, I get the champion, and I just screw around with it. I'll just level up to level 6, fill the ult, ranges, put a dummy, just play around with it. So it increases your efficiency of learning things. But I think the big one is for beginners. You can actually do a lot of awesome drills. You can drill like CSing under tower. You can put a dummy in the base that soaks up all the minions, and you can make minions like come under the tower just permanently, and you can just practice CSing under tower. There's just like a lot of creative like drills that you can do as beginners to actually streamline like kind of the learning of the absolute basics. So that's like the original practice tool. Now, multiplayer practice tool, the first thing that really comes to my mind is it's just such a more efficient way to run 1v1s.
You can think about it. A top lane, let's both instantly level up to level 6. One item, ults. Let's see what's like the
Limitless.
1v1.
And also, think about it. After you do a 1v1 and someone dies, you can just reset the game. So instead of having to get out of the game, do the lobby again, and go through that whole bullshit process.
The whole lane phase.
In the MLA, we have the 1v1 dojo that AJ runs, and this is going to just streamline that whole process. It's just going to cut the fat of all the time of like remaking the lobbies and waiting for the minions to spawn.
That's a huge one.
It's just such a big time investment. But now it's like boom, 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 you get straight in. So I think from a laner's perspective, this is incredibly valuable. What you could even do, this is where things get interesting here, is that you imagine you could even get junglers involved, and you could like have a jungler and be like, is there a way where, like, if I'm in this scenario, if you come in from here, do I die? Or like, you could like try really creative things. You could replicate scenarios.
I'm thinking of interactions as well. Like, oftentimes, like, people ask, like, I don't know, for example, how does Sejuani Q interact with Gragas E? Which one gets CC'd? You know? You can just figure that out in the practice tool.
Yep.
That's something that you couldn't really do like over and over again before. I guess you could just do it in a custom game, but now you can just spam interactions over and over again
So much
without
more
having
efficient.
to worry about it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is this going to accelerate? Like everything is everyone just going to solve the game now?
Well, that's what it was interesting because when I watched the post from Riot, the comment that the writer made, is it Medlar? Is that his name? I can't remember his name. The main dude. It was such a fascinating comment. He said something along the lines of, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was like, where we were worried that this would take the fun out of like
Exploring the game.
Yeah, it would like
Well, Riot want people in solo queue.
Yeah.
They don't want people spending the
grinding
majority of their
practice tool.
time grinding practice tool.
Yeah.
I think what he said is he doesn't want the best way to get good at the game by grinding practice
This
tool.
makes
Yeah.
sense. That's could be problematic.
Well, I don't think it ever will be. I don't think
Competing with people and
Different.
against people, nothing can. I guess for the pro level, I think this could maybe really change things.
Well, I'll be honest. Like, I think this is very fitting that they've done it now with this particular season as well, this coming season, because there's more neutral objectives, and what does that mean? There's more chaos, there's more fighting, and I think having access to other ways of like drilling, like skirmishing and champ interactions is so important. And also, Nathan and Charlie, let's talk for a second the new player experience. Think about how long it takes to learn, matchups and even just trading and all of these things and just champ interactions. You do want to make it easier for the up and coming player base to catch up when it comes to a lot of this skirmishing and a lot of this training and a lot of this matchup understanding. You know what I mean? Like if you're newer to the game, it's very, very, very hard to catch up over time, especially now with how good the player base is getting. So if anything, I'm not really viewing this as a tool for the more experienced player base. I'm viewing this more through the lens of like less experienced players who want to really take the game seriously and ramp up their level of play in a faster period of time. Like I said, people who are willing to do those 1v1 dojos and really grind their matchups, they're going to get rewarded for it, as they should. So I think it's just one of those things where it's like, if you're disciplined enough and you know how to use a tool, it will be an advantage. But that's not to say everyone's going to use it, because it's still a lot of effort. You've got to still find a 1v1 partner or other people to get excited. Hey guys, instead of playing solo queue and ARAMs and this and this and that, you're going to come into practice.
There's a lot of logistics rather than just pressing the queue up button.
Exactly right. There's a lot of barriers to entry there still. So I think it's like, why not? Like, have the option there for disciplined individuals who want to streamline their journey.
I reckon it's going to be useful for people that already use practice tool, but I don't think it's going to be a reason for people to start using it. If you already do practice tool, like me and you doing our 1v1s in top lane, Curtis, imagine how many times we had to close the game, open it up again, and do it again. Literally
gone.
hours. That would have made our lives easier.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'll say the last one, bot lane 2v2s. Right? Bot lane 2v2s.
They can finally practice 2v2s.
That's interesting. So, yeah, a lot of interesting things there.
All right, I think that's all the big major changes to talk about. Moving on here, Curtis.
Yeah, moving on. So I got linked this fascinating tweet, or what do they call them now? Posts on X.
X post.
And this is from a writer. Her name is Maddie Marquis. I don't know how to say that. And essentially, it was a post about, if you have a League Smurf account, why? Is it to play with friends, to dunk on noobs, or to try out a different lane without hurting your rank? Or even an iron to diamond climb challenge, or something else? In brackets, I won't come after you in any way, just curious about reasoning if you're willing to share. Now, this actually got a lot of interaction.
Wow, a lot of interaction. It's got 5.2 likes. It's probably
1,500 comments.
Wow.
So I want to kind of go through a few of the community's responses, because this is like a really interesting insight into how community views smurfing. So first one here was to play with friends of a different rank and to learn a new role. Now, I think that one's relatively straightforward. I think it, makes sense. I wanted to see if my MMR on my main was fucked, and it was. I had 1,000 games stuck D4, did about 50 games, and got to Grandmaster on a Smurf. So when you see posts, like, again, so the way I want to view this is through two lenses, Nathan, when we're going through these posts. I want to view it through the lens first and foremost of like, okay, what are they actually saying? Like factual information.
Yeah.
But then also like psychologically, what are the narratives at play here from the community? Like, what is the reason they want to Smurf actually justifiable? Or is it just because there is some sort of underlying...
People like the reset feeling and
some sort of narrative at play, right? So like when you read this, when you see this post, right, it's just, first things first, that comes to my mind, it's like, this is largely bullshit. That's just not the case. We know that is impossible. There's no way you can get 1,000 games stuck in Diamond 4 and then you're magically a Grandmaster player.
Yeah, there's more context to the situation. He's either higher elo in the past, or he's literally just he just needs that reset, the complete mental block, right? There's more.
Or it's just not true.
Situation. Yeah, or it's just not true.
It's just not true. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like, if we could break that one down, like when I look at this about the whole thing about MMR being fucked. Now, look,
like we can case study those people. We can break it down. It would make sense.
There are scenarios where MMR, it can be really, really bad, right? We have mentioned this on the podcast, and there actually are moments where, you know, maybe you tilted a shit ton on an account, you have ruined the MMR of account. Now, you've been very vocal, Nathan, about just grinding it through.
It's important for your journey to break this narrative, to realize that you can fix accounts through good process and literally just good decision making. Understand the game works like the game. There's no system against you.
Right. So there is benefits of that, but it is a massive time sink.
Yes.
So I think the way I view it when it comes to making, you know, Smurf accounts is, you kind of get one shot. If you want to make your one Smurf, do your one Smurf, do it once, do it just for the feeling of it. But if you're getting in the habit of doing that into second Smurf, a third Smurf, and then you just get
every time I get stuck, it's just I just need an extra push, that extra MMR boost. It's dangerous.
This one was adding champs to my champ pool without dunking my LP. We literally recommend that, right? I mean, do you guys recommend that?
I would recommend someone, if you're an Emerald 4 player, you ideally have like a Platinum 4 account to learn a new champion, because that's probably going to be your skill level with that champ, about 400 LP below if you've never played that champion before. So that's good to learn that champ.
And look at the comment here from the writer. Why not use normals for that? Do norms not give the competitive enough play for you to feel confident bringing them into ranked? Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's such an interesting that a writer would even ask that question, right? Because in a way, we know that normal games,
well, this is
completely different.
Yeah, people do think that normal games are just ranked without the stakes, but it's not.
The matchmaking's all messed up.
Game.
It's a different game, yeah.
It's a completely different game.
People have a different mindset, and the matchmaking's completely different.
What I recommend is people play a couple of normal games.
Yeah, you can definitely practice in normal games.
But yeah, if you want to learn your champion, you need to actually go into ranked. You're not going to learn a champion in normals.
No. This one was another one here. A couple reasons I use them. Sometimes I'd like to play anonymously as a content creator. This person must be a content creator. People like to stalk or track your activity, or you get harassed in your games for your name. We see that not only as content creators, but also just in general. You might have a bunch of friends on your friends list, and people are like tracking your LP and like, haha, you're in Diamond now and you're a master, and like
they get asked to like play and duel all the time, but they want. That's what I see in our communities. They want to just take their rank climb seriously, not have their friends bug them, so they play on like a secret account to actually just not get bugged to play with them.
Totally.
I think that's completely justifiable. Honestly, I've done a similar thing. I've like wiped my friends list on the client before to like just focus on myself. I think it's fine.
And then for the reason above, ranked is the best practice. And if I want to challenge myself, for example, hit master on every role, and it's easier to do on not a public-facing account. And I'm sure, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so I'm sure regular people feel this way as well, with friends watching their progress, not just streamers. And yes, to play with friends due to ranked restrictions. So that one, this one's it's a bit controversial, right? Like going on a second account.
Yeah, you have this scenario where you're an Emerald 4 player and your friend's learning the game in Bronze, and you want a Bronze account and just smurf and carry them in Bronze.
That is probably the thing that I dislike, and I think shouldn't. And
I would say you're screwing over your friend by doing
that.
Yeah,
you are. You literally are. Their view of the game's getting distorted. And also, there is elements where people say, it's like, well, that person's like coaching me through the game. They're learning things, sure. But I always think it does more damage in the long run.
Well, then also as well, like, it's not really ethical. I mean, you're kind of ruining the game for everyone else, right? So that is the problem. Like, it's so interesting how it's framed, right? It's like, oh, I'm just kind of harmlessly playing ranked with my friends.
My friend, it's such a wholesome activity.
And then on the other side, it's like, I'm the one, you're getting... Notice that I've always found Smurfing such a fascinating... kind of
the way that people view and talk about it,
it's like they frame it in such an innocent way, and then you get the other people on the other side saying like, I fucking hate Smurfs and they ruin
ruin League.
Smurfs ruin League and anti. It's like you see this, like, it's just all about the way it's framed. It's all relative. I find that so interesting. So we'll move on.
What else we got here?
I have Smurfs for playing with, low elo friends. So this is the thing as well. Like, just play norms. You know what I mean? Like, or use a second account to play norms.
I think that's actually against Riot's terms of service, by the way. Like, against the summoner's code to Smurf to boost. It's duo boosting.
Yeah, it's just duo boosting.
You're duo boosting
right.
someone
Literally.
at the end of the day, right? They should call it that.
Yeah, and then this one as well, playing other roles for fun or some other champs that was in. Yeah, so like, play. But even look at this. Playing other roles for fun and some fun champs that would be seen as inting in my elo like Yone Jungle.
So they're ruining the game.
They're ruining the game for other people. So you always see this like constant kind of tug of war between people complaining about the negatives of it, but then kind of again painting Smurfing when it's convenient for them in this positive light. It's just it's something that I've noticed. People are incredibly biased.
People are out
biased
to lunch with these Smurf things. That this
Really
these
delusional.
Smurf takes are so delusional.
It's so weird how they view normals in Smurf games. Like, they actually got it backwards. They're saying they're going to use Smurf games to play with their friends and normal games to learn champions. It should be the other way around. You should play normals with your mates, not ruin the rank.
Flex as well is in
Well, I think Flex is just like a failed.
It's just a
experiment.
failed experiment,
I don't
right?
think anyone uses it.
And this is just following up the writer also said, I ask because I'd love to understand how we can still fulfill players' needs that are met by making a Smurf while still protecting new players from getting stomped on by these new accounts with experienced players. Is it possible to do both of these things at the same time?
Very good question.
Very good question. I mean, again, the reality, the way you would probably, okay, so you would have, the best way to do this is that you would create a list, right, in order of the most main reasons as to why you would have a Smurf. And it seems there's only two or three themes. Higher elo, more experienced players want to play with lower elo friends in a more casual environment to kind of have that fun interaction. So that's number one. So then you would ask the question, then why not do that in normal games? Why not just play a normal game on your main account with that person? But then the argument typically then becomes, but then I've got a higher normal games MMR, so they're just going to get stomped. So the reality, it's like there isn't really a solution for that because you are that high elo MMR player. So what you're saying to yourself is, I want to be the one that stomps the game with my friend to ensure we win. And we want to make sure we're versing noobs so that my friend has a good experience. But you don't want it to be the other end. It's like you want it to be completely biased for you. You just basically want to go in, be the best player, let your friend kind of chill, give them the super easy learning journey, and then but you don't want the opposite to be true. You don't want the enemy to have really good teams because then your friend is going to get kind of stomped. So you kind of want just like this, it's utopia. It doesn't exist. There is no solution for that because it's an incredibly biased situation.
Well, the only solution is to go on an account where you're not a Smurf, right?
That's the only solution. And your friend is going to have a hard time. So the tough pill to swallow is that if you are significantly better than someone, you can't really casually play with them. That's the sad reality about League of Legends. And that probably is the case in so many other sports. Think about how can you imagine if you're like really, really good at pool, your billiards, right? And you're an expert, and your friend wants to play doubles, and they want to go to the pool hall and just casually play doubles with some random at the pub with another very English thing, Aussie thing, right? How would that ever work? Because if you're an elite level pool player, what are you gonna miss on purpose? You're not actually having any fun because you're gonna get any ball you want in. No one is setting up the balls you're just going to stomp the game. How does that actually work? You can't play in a casual setting as like a professional, really. Like, what does that look like?
I've got a solution for this. What you should do is, if you're smurfing to play with your friend, you should just play a role you don't know.
It's still
so you're basically saying, so that analogy, Curtis, it can be a bit different with League because you can intentionally disadvantage yourself by playing suboptimal build, suboptimal champions, but you're always that really good pool player.
It won't be perfect.
It's a bit. You see what I'm saying? It's a bit different with League.
But
you could justify it that way.
You can, but how? But the reality is that you're still like you all of the the onus is on that high-low player. We're just assuming that guy's just like a really nice guy and is not going to do any
intentionally disadvantage themselves. It's a theoretical.
It's too theoretical. It's not going to happen. What's going to happen is that they're with their potential girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever,
and impress them.
They start losing. Is don't worry, I got this. Step out of the way and just fucking kill everyone. It's just not going to work. So I just don't. That problem I don't think has a solution.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It's a recipe for disaster. And then you have the other ones like learning another role or learning another champion on a second account. I mean, is there a way? I mean, flex queue?
Yeah, so maybe if they made flex queue better or something. I don't know. I don't even know how they do that.
It's still just going to be a lower stakes environment to rank. So people are just inherently not going to try as hard.
People just like ranked. People liked ranked. Okay, this is league, all right, and league players. People like the feeling of progression in ranked. It doesn't even matter really what sort of elo it is. And people like killing anonymous people on the internet. Just stomp him.
Yeah.
That's just it.
That's just it.
That's just it. That's just the reality, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I just found that interesting. I think we'll try and link maybe this in the description.
We'll link. It's an interesting thread.
It's an interesting thread. I think there's a lot more in there that you guys can dive into. There was one. I just found this funny here. You get some like these toxic comments as well. People like saying directly to Riot, instead of farming community for free ideas, do your job that you are getting paid for. Also update the announcer sound design. It is of utter piss quality.
Wow, they actually responded. Maddie responded.
They responded to that.
See, look, Riot's very communicative.
I love it. Some wholesome and toxic interactions in the same thread.
Yeah.
So, moving on. This laptop's a bit scuffed here. All right. So I got linked this keynote speech from Faker. So this was it's like some like tech
conference,
and he was kind of there's a part of this little speech here that I wanted to share with you, Nathan. You haven't seen this before, so I'm gonna gank you with it. And just a little segment. I found it really, really fascinating, and then we'll just kind of discuss after. So let's go ahead.
제가 프로게임을 하면서 가장 크게 배운 것 중에 하나가 저는 실패에 관한 것인 것 같아요. 저는 그냥 항상 이겨야만 했고 이제 남들과 비교해서 항상 1등이 되어야 되는 프로의 세계잖아요. 그래서 당연히 이기는 게 좋은 거고 지는 거는 나쁜 거다. 실패는 나쁜 거다라고만 생각을 했었는데 저는 프로게이머를 하면서 특히 최근에 저는 한 2, 3년 전부터 많이 배운 것 같아요. 실패라는 게 그냥 실패라는 어감 자체가 되게 부정적이잖아요. 근데 막상 생각해보면 저는 실패로부터 이렇게 성장할 수 있었고 이렇게 더 잘하게 된 것 같아요. 오히려 저는 지금이 전성기라고 느끼고 23년, 24년도 제가 올해 3주 전에 우승을 하고 왔는데 그 발판이 저는 실패가 실패라고 생각했으면 못했을 것 같아요. 그래서 지금은 그런 실패 하나하나가 모여서 저를 좀 만들었다고 생각하고 오히려 실패가 작은 성공이라고 생각해요. 실패는 성공의 어머니라는 말이 있잖아요. 저는 근데 그것보다도 실패는 오히려 성공의 일부라고 생각해요. 그래서 제가 만약에 경기를 지더라도 이거는 작은 성공이구나 라고 생각할 수 있게 된 것 같아요. 그게 좀 저에게 있어서 가장 큰 배움이었던 것 같고 그게 오히려 저에게 더 큰 동기가 된 것 같아요. 지지 않아야겠다, 더 이겨야겠다라는 생각보다는 그냥 게임을 좀 즐기고 이 순간에서 내가 실패하든 성공을 하든 이 연설에서 내가 스크립트를 준비를 안 해서 실패를 하든 성공을 하든 이거는 작은 성공이겠다라고 생각해서 저는 그런 도전 정신을 좀 많이 배운 것 같아요.
Just wanted to do that bit.
Wow. It's mind blowing to see the line. Like he's literally saying, I view failure as a small success. It's actually pretty profound. There's so much in that statement.
I like what he said as well. He said, failure, there's a quote where it's like, failure is the mother of success. But he said it's even more than that, where it's like, if with every failure literally is a success.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not the mother, it is success. Because he says, without the failure, I wouldn't have become all these losses. I wouldn't have become the player I was. And that I wouldn't have been able to succeed in the long run. Like, he had to fail to be the person he was. He had to be this end result of this amazing player and this person that is. He had to fail. It was unavoidable. And like you said there, now he can just go into every game and just enjoy the game, because even if he loses, it's still in his minor success because he's able to, learn and get, get knowledge from each of these failures. Like that is, I feel like that is the end goal.
If you can get to that,
if you can get to that point, that's like you've transcended. You're like fully enlightened. You're like the most competitive, enlightened individual at that point, right? You've completely removed all of the pain and negative connotation around losing, and you've just completely not only removed it, you've actually reversed it. And now every time you're losing,
it's a positive
it's
rather
a positive.
than negative.
Like that, you're not even making it at a neutral. You know how we say like stoicism is more like you're not really. Stoicism is kind of the middle ground, right? Like stoicism being stoic is more like, okay, I lost. This sucks. So, like let's just own it. Like this is
the reality.
I'm just gonna suffer through it and suck it up. Right? That's stoicism. Where this is the next level. This is like, again, transcending stoicism, where it's like, okay, I had to be in this shit situation.
Well, it's not sucking it up. Stoicism is more about accepting things for like what's
accepting
happening
for what it is.
Yeah.
But you're not turning it into a positive. It's more you're neutralizing negativity, right? Stoicism is more like, a neutral. I would say for me anyway, the way I interpret stoicism in my life, it's like this thing's happening to me. Okay, what's in my control? What's not in my control? I'm going to focus on what's in my control and then do what I can. Now, I don't come out of that being like literally enjoying that situation. It's more like I can handle it. I have a handle on it. But I feel like this is, again, for at least in my interpretation, I don't want to impose that on you, Nathan, but my interpretation is more what I take from Faker speech is like, again, and this is like an enlightened view of failure. You're literally flipping it from a negative, not only to a neutral, to literally a positive, in a positive light. I have to lose. Because in order for me to evolve, I have to lose to be a better version of myself. So I just think that I get it. This is a professional, right? This is an absolute professional of their craft. This is the elite of the elite of the elite. We're not even talking in esports. I would argue that Faker is probably one of the most elite competitors in the entire world across all sports, right? Up there with like
mindset-wise,
Roger Federer's and the Nadals and the Djokovic's and the Michael Jordans, whatever, the Brady's, whatever. This is like the elite of the elite of the elite, mindset-wise, and dedication to improvement in their craft. And the reality is that if we can even take 1% of this energy, if we can take 1% of this mindset, you know what? Instead of just losing my mind over losing first scuttle or getting first blooded or my jungler not ganking, not fixing this wave, if I can even have 1% of that to be like, you know what? Wonder what I can learn from that. Maybe this failure of me dying to this gank
is a good thing.
Maybe it's a good thing. Yeah. Maybe I can actually learn from this and not die to it next time. I just think that this is incredibly motivating. And I will say this very, very selfishly. I kind of want Faker to retire in a weird way, so he writes his book and shares his encyclopedic knowledge, from his competitive journey. That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for the Faker book. I want to get it signed, autographed, and I want to learn his mindset, because that is the key to success. I feel like his success is his mindset.
I think just my personal philosophy, just studying a lot of competitors and, Faker said that he was on the extreme before, where he'll get really emotional, upset, view failure as negative. I feel like you have to go through that to get to here. There's no way you can't just be born. I'm like climbing the ranks, 15, 16. I hear this, Nathan and Curtis are talking about it, and I can just have this mindset tomorrow and it'll work. It actually won't work for you, I don't think, because you need to come from the other end of viewing failure as negative and, smashing your head against the wall and just absolutely just mental booming to appreciate this sort of mindset philosophy.
We'll kind of realize that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You realize that it's unsustainable, right? Because I think what you're trying to articulate there, Nathan, is passion and competitive spirit, right?
He clearly cares. I can see it get misinterpreted, especially, thinking about the players that we worked with or up and coming, like the 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Is like a big part of their success and what we saw is that they hated losing more than they won, and that drove them. And that is a powerful motivator. It works. We've seen it work. Faker was that. It worked for him. But then the next levels, and as you get older and, mature in career and realize that, making these failures as negatives is not going to be productive.
Well, I think what you just articulated there, Nathan, was really, really insightful, actually, because if you think about it, let's take two individuals, okay? Both of them let's say both of them have this very, really, again, let's say Faker-esque mentality where it's a loss is a loss. I'm going to focus on what I can improve on, and I'm going to view it as a positive. There are two ways to get there. You can get there, like you said, through the trial of the flames and, you know, all that competitive passion and losing your mind and being that hyper competitive individual and really giving a shit and really wanting to win. But then you realize that wasn't sustainable when you kind of grind through that and you get to this point. Or you can be that individual that never really gave a shit. And you're actually in that position where you're able to kind of not care much about the losses because you never gave a shit about the losses. You know what I mean? Like you never actually cared. You just weren't a competitive individual. You never had that crazy passion and competitive drive to win. So that's what you're saying. What you're saying is that, like, you know, if you haven't got that competitive spirit, you haven't got that like fire, you never were going to make it anyway.
Yeah, like that person's not going to have any success.
They're not going to have any success anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So like they can both look like they have the same mindset, but
the results will be completely
different. Exactly right.
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So,
and he said as well, specifically as a pro gamer. Now, sports experts here, I want you guys to challenge what I'm about to say here, but I think the way being a pro player in League of Legends, Scrim solo queue, you play more games with stakes than any other. This is a wild statement potentially, but I think I'm pretty confident it's true from my limited understanding of the sports world and every sport out there. League of Legends pro player, loses more games with stakes than any other craft or sport in the world. Is this a true statement?
I would say like any sort of like chess or poker, you're going to lose more because the games are faster. That's all.
Okay, sorry.
Poker and chess are really close,
and
man.
poker are fast.
You can like when I watch Magnus Carlsen stream, like he's playing like 60-second blitz chess. That guy's like he's winning, but there's the potential to lose once a minute in chess. But the stakes are the same technically. You still gain LP, so I think chess kind of beats it there a little bit. But
yeah,
and poker hands, poker
you lose multiple times a game because you're playing the hands.
Yeah,
right?
you're losing the hands.
Okay, so I guess poker and chess.
So poker and chess and League and a lot of other probably esports, right, are like in that realm.
Because with like team traditional sports like basketball, like obviously there's only one match. You know, you could do like scrimmage matches and stuff for some stakes, but it's too slow, right? You're not going to get the volume.
Well, that's not how they practice in traditional sports.
Yeah, it's just a different way you practice.
Speaking.
Because like losing scrims, like the amount of like losing scrims is serious with like league pro games, even though it really shouldn't be. There is stakes because your team's like mental and mindset is like attached to. I mean, it shouldn't be, right? But that's what the way it is. It's attached to.
Well, it has to be. I mean, you scrim other teams for a reason,
you're
right?
seeing your skill level.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And same with solo queue. You know, you have to perform in those. Otherwise, you know, if you start performing poorly in scrims, you can get removed from a team.
There's also the argument, right, with like the 1 minute chess or the poker hands. Like, you're not committing as much time, so it's not as meaningful. But if you spend the time to sit at the computer, queue up, do the draft, play the game, and then lose, like you are.
There's a bigger investment.
Yeah, it is a bigger investment.
I think it's different. I'm trying to get. It's like sort of different. Like losing in League is different from anything else. Is sort of what I'm trying to get at. Whether it's
it's a combination of like quality and quantity of the losses. I think is what makes it unique.
Yeah, you're super invested when you lose a League game. You put it all in. But like a poker hand, there's not. I feel like, you know,
I don't know. I've played a bit of chess, but I can't really comment as much.
Poker
as
players and chess players, let us know.
Well, I would say one could make the argument that poker is way more,
stakes,
way more stakes. It's literally money.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Well, I see your point.
Basically, what I'm saying is you learn a lot about losing in League because people don't run around with... I don't know what the win rates are in chess, Charles, but, you know, in solo queue...
Probably move closer to the mic, by the way.
That's a good point. Yeah, like the best chess players, they do win a lot.
They win a lot, right?
And
it's full in your control.
Probably more than the best solo queue players. Like the players top of Challenger, like still 55%.
Yeah, Faker would have like a 50-something% win rate, right?
You're right. Well, I think a better way to put it is like... To be good at League of Legends, you have to know how to lose. Faker knows how to lose, right?
But I think that's in all sports. You got to learn how to. You got to know how to lose.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm saying you learn real quick with League, and it's like the extreme with League.
Yeah, well, like I would agree. I think that League is probably one of those games that pushes the more stage 4 oriented issues the most. But the main difference, right? Again, just comparing chess to the league is that chess is all on you.
It's
It's 1v1, right? And so there is not that, there's less mental baggage. It's like, well, if I made a mistake, I can't blame anyone. There's no one griefing my chess game, right? It's just me.
But maybe let's correct this. Now I'm getting to the end here. Team sport. You lose in a team setting way.
You move on to Skool.
All right, moving on to our Skool community post of the week. This one here comes from Keaton. The title of this post is "Wanting to expand my champion pool but finding no success." Hey everyone, I'm a Diamond 4 Shyvana one trick. Recently she has been nerfed several times in a row, and I felt her being much harder to play. The higher I go on the ladder due to the enemy junglers knowing what to do against a champ like her, not to mention she's not even getting reworked next year, and I just see her getting more and more outdated. Anyways, I didn't plan on dropping Shyvana, but I also want to be able to play other champs. The issue is the game just doesn't feel as open to me as it does on Shyvana. I have played many other champions in the jungle on Smurfs, especially ones like her, like Gwen, and it just doesn't feel as fun. It is causing me to lose my confidence because I don't click with the other champs as much as I have with Shyvana. The only one I've found success with is Zac, but he is such a different playstyle than Shyvana, since you go from a champion that can only deal damage to a champion that can only really CC. And because of this, I often struggle to win games, even with massive leads on Zac. Are there any champions similar to Shyvana? Do you recommend trying to play a different archetype of jungler than Shyvana? I know Coach Kurtz released a video about how to learn a new champion, but how do you find one?
So I know you're the jungle master here, Nathan, but I'm not going to say anything about junglers.
No,
I'm just going to say at a high level.
I was going to answer this question big picture as well.
Just like I find a fascinating thing here, right? You can read between the lines. This person's played a lot of Shyvana, right? Shit ton of Shyvana. They have a lot of Shyvana mastery, and they've enjoyed their time playing Shyvana. And then, so as a result, they wouldn't have much mastery on any other champion. So they've tried all these champions, right? They've tried all these others, and they're like, oh, nothing is as fun as Shyvana. But in reality, they said, notice what they said. The only champ they didn't mind was Zac. Why Zac? Zac is so easy to execute. If you think about it, like you can go in and as Zac, you're going to land an E. So I'm not saying that they fell in love with Zac, but what I'm saying is that says to me, the fact that Zac was the only one that they had a moderate amount of success with, is that they're not liking all these other champs just because they don't have mastery. You know what I mean? Like
it's sort of basically saying I don't have the feeling of the level of competence as Shyvana on other champs, so I don't like any other champ. But how can you get to that point? It's
every champ
statement.
Is going to feel shit comparatively to your Shyvana because you're so good at Shyvana comparatively to every other champ. So this is where people get themselves into a rut when they OTP for such a long period of time, is because you're so much better at this one champion than the entire league roster. So the reality is that no matter what champion you play, it's going to feel like shit.
You're really not going to find the success you have with Shyvana for a long time.
For a long time. And even if, and this is the scary thing, is that now what you're thinking is that all these champs are not as fun as Shyvana, but you're getting tricked. If we were to go back in time and you would have mained that champ, this other champ, like say Viego, and you got told to play Shyvana, even if Shyvana was objectively strong, you wouldn't enjoy Shyvana as much as you would Viego because you just haven't got the time in. So like, I think what this person needs to wrap their head around is that, yeah, sure, you might objectively like the design and the aesthetics and the kit of Shyvana, but that's also compounded. There's another variable here, which is the amount of mastery you have in that champion. So before you can have an accurate read on what champion you don't have fun with, you need to actually develop mastery with another champion and send it. So what I would say to a lot of people who say this question is pick a champ that you don't hate and get 70 games on it.
Just get to that point. Like you don't have to have fun as long as you don't hate playing it.
As long as you don't hate it. Just get like 70 games on it and play 70 games on it. And you might get to the 60, 70 game mark and you're like, you know what? Still not for me. Move on. But you have to send it really to that 60, 70 game mark and give it a red hot crack before you can make any judgment calls.
Yeah, really try and figure out what does no success mean? How much time are you giving these champions?
I bet you if you looked at their
20
RPG,
games on, it's like 20 games with
it'd be
Gwen
like 15 games.
Yeah,
It'd be like nothing. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Just with the language, you know what I mean? Like you can kind of read between the lines there.
You can brute force that as well. If you want to just try and learn a champ over 70 games, like you don't need to play 70 straight games. You can do the 2-to-1 ratio with those 70 games, right? And try and cycle it a little bit. And yeah, it won't be that painful. Like there's always that bit of honeymoon period at the start where it's fun. And then games like 40 to 60 might be a bit painful, but by the end, you'll have an idea of what it's actually like to learn a champ. And then it'll be easier the next time.
Exactly right. I think that's the key point. Every time you learn that next champion, it will get easier to learn the next one. Right, because you've now viewed the game through a slightly different lens.
Yeah, because think about our league journey. How much of that journey is just learning champ? Okay, that's done. Next champ, learning champ. We've gone through that process ourselves so many times, and it's just natural. But yeah, that's the dark side of OTPing, I guess.
That is
you
the
never get that.
one of the skills. If you want to be a long-term, reliable, solid, well-rounded player, you need to learn how to. You actually need to learn and master the process of learning champions.
Yes.
That is just part of the skill set, and it's uncomfortable and it's hard. It sucks, but you got to learn how to do it. That's simple.
In terms of playing champions similar to Shyvana, like maybe he likes the farming style versus completely switching up to a different style. Maybe, a champion that's maybe not alt reliant, Graves or Briar, these type of champions. I mean, me personally, I love early game pressure junglers, and I have fun on the whole roster. But some people, I feel, get like, okay, I play a farming jungler, I play this champion really well, but I can't replicate that success, or I might as well just play something else. I don't really have an answer. Do you have an answer for
What
that?
you should play?
Yeah.
I got some points there. Like, in terms of the farming junglers, I feel like the issue people have going from farming jungler to farming jungler is that they're so reliant on how you deal damage that you can hit the CS numbers on, like, let's say a Fiddlesticks or a Diana, same as he was hitting on Shyvana, but you just got to not do as much damage, so you're not going to be rewarded from it. So,
But you're not doing enough damage because you're saying he doesn't have enough champ mastery.
That's
on
correct. He doesn't have enough champ mastery.
So then the thought in the mind would be like, well, why would I just not be playing Shyvana
That's
here?
correct.
There's no expanding this pool doesn't make sense.
That's right. He can do a lot of the same PvE stuff correctly, but not be rewarded in the skirmishes. So with that in mind, there actually would be a bit of a benefit to trying the early game style just to see how it feels, just like throw himself in the deep end.
That's an option. The way I answer these questions, by the way, when people ask me about champ pool, the question I say is, what trait is important for you to have? Like, what aspect of Shyvana's kit do you like? Do you like the fast clearing? Do you like the poke? What aspect of the kit is important to you? So when someone mains Ahri and they say, I'm an Ahri OTP and I'm sick of Ahri, well, what do you like about Ahri? Do you like the wave clear? Do you like the mobility? Do you like the CC? And then what we could do is then we can go down the roster and we can identify a series of champions that have those similar traits, and you just pick the one, and you again filter it based on what's the most important trait for you, and then you pick the champion. That's the way I like to do it.
Yeah, for example, me, I love diving. I would always say to people in my program, it's like, if my champion can't dive level 3, I'm not playing it. That's
Great.
Extreme, but like that's sometimes
That's
my
a
mindset.
trait.
That's what I was looking for. That's the trait that I was looking for, right? All right, anything else to add for that one, guys? All right, we're happy with that. There you go. Hopefully that helps you, Mr. Keaton. Mailbag time. Away we go. Jingle song. Alrighty then. Our first question here comes from someone by the name of Yunggod. The title of this email is, why do people hate competitiveness in games? Hello, Nathan and Curtis. I've been watching the podcast for quite a while now, and I've gotten really passionate about the perspective you offer on League of Legends and its competitive nature. There's a video I recently came across claiming to have found a supposed link between the life cycle of a game and growing competitiveness. Specifically, that with growing competitiveness, a game reaches the end of its life cycle. Now, it's only strictly about League. In fact, League is not mentioned at all, but it is a broad discussion about competitive multiplayer PvP games and thus applicable to League. I'll be curious to know your thoughts on this because I sure have mine. I'm just going to say what tipped me off in the first 5 minutes of the video was the mention of cheaters and tryhards in the same sentence as something ruining games. Apart from that, perhaps the most famous game, chess, is not mentioned at all. You will know what I mean when I say, if you simply keep chess in the back of your mind, none of the points of the video will stand up to scrutiny. I'll link the video. I understand you have if you have no interest in reacting to it. I'm not going you to watch it. It's 24 minutes long. But let me know your thoughts. All right, so we haven't watched the video. We won't watch the video, but let's maybe watch the video and we can talk about it maybe on another thing. But I think we can understand what we're going to hear. So why do people hate competitiveness at games? So basically, it sounds like what the video is saying is that once video games get too competitive, it dies. Now, this is true. I've seen this a lot because, yeah, I'd say the theory there would be that people don't have that same... people love the nostalgia of League in season 3, season 2 and stuff because no one knew what they were doing. And it was sort of easy to sort of like pub stomp and sort of as well, even Riot and the game developers as well. They don't like min max and try and think about balance like that because everything's sort of like extreme. So you can have really fun, extreme experiences that are more really memorable than maybe being on the opposite end of like maybe the unbalance, right? So, and then as the game evolves, you know, the things get figured out. People know how the way the game gets played. It's sort of just stale and people just sort of latch onto the nostalgia, and then people just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to find the next fun thing. I want to go. People constantly want to get back to the honeymoon phase of game life cycles, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, interesting. That's a really, really interesting point. Because I'm gonna preface this by saying I'm not an expert on game design by any means, so just take what I say with a pinch of salt. But I like the way you kind of deconstructed that, because if you think about League, right, use League as an example. The reason people played League for the first few seasons, and say the first 5 seasons probably, is very different to why a lot of people play League now.
It's different now, yeah.
Right? And so you could easily see a world in which League or Riot didn't make the appropriate changes to keep the game fresh and to give people continued reasons to put time into the game. So every season you're playing League, even throughout the season, the game is evolving, right? Because if you think about it, the player base is always evolving no matter what. Whether you make changes to the game, right? Whether the game gets patched, players are getting better. And so if the game doesn't keep up in terms of its complexity, or doesn't keep up in terms of like the freshness and the reasons to play the game, well, what's going to happen? Well, you're just going to...
Everything gets solved. And the game's played the same way all the time. So I guess what you're getting at here, Curtis, is that Riot, I guess you could say, is built different because, and there's been no other game in history, competitive game in history, that's been patched as much as League. That's a fact.
That's a fact.
So League is built different. It can't actually be compared to most other video games because the developers don't put that time and effort into it. Also, we always say that the rank system is the best of any competitive game in League as well. So that's got that going for it. And same with chess, right? Like chess has the MMR system that stood the test of time, right?
Well, I think chess is different because I think the game...
Yeah, because that's the same game. Yeah, so chess has to be different, right? Because it's the same game exactly. It hasn't been patched.
Well, chess is
so how is chess different?
Well, chess is different in the sense that it has like an infinite complexity, and right, it's like.
I guess the game's just perfect.
The game's like a perfect. It's like a perfect competitive game because as someone, you can't solve chess because whenever there's a move, there's like probably. I'm assuming, Charles, you would know chess a bit, but I'm assuming there's a counter move, and is that I'm assuming I'm like an idiot here. I don't know what the fuck.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of games of chess that are solved, right? Where you're just in a solved state for the majority of the game. But I feel like a different way to put this is that League of Legends just got over the hump. There's a lot of games that don't make it over the hump.
That's right.
And I don't know my chess history perfectly, but chess wasn't always like this. Chess has been changed. There have been rules that have been introduced. It's not been the same since bloody 1200 when they made it or whatever. I probably got that year way off.
It gets patched every 100 years.
Yeah, no, it would have been patched, right? Yeah. Modern chess is modern chess, right? So what I think they've got is they've got chess to a state where it's got over that hump, and now they don't really have to do a whole lot. They are actually talking about changing the rules, by the way, slightly for competitive chess, so it's not off the table. But League of Legends, like, there was a time where, like, Season 7, Season 8, people would harken back to, like, Season 3, Season 4 and say, oh, that was the peak of League. I was actually doing that. I thought, like, League was so good at Season 3. Like, I loved it. But now, it's like, that is not even a thought in my mind because we've got over the hump. They've set the precedent of constant patches. They've made, like, actual meaningful gameplay decisions and not gimmicks, because that's what a lot of games try and do, is they try and gimmick their way through the system. World of Warcraft. But League of Legends is a really, really good way of doing it. And I just think that no matter what they do from here on out, I just think it's not going anywhere, to be honest.
It's also, you've got to talk about the format of the game. Like, okay, if Riot here was working with an MMO, it would fail. MOBA is being that genre. MOBA is like the idea of 5 lanes, you know, gold experience, Nexus towers, and like roles, and the genre itself, it can stand the test of time in terms of a competitive game. That's I think the crux of it as well.
Well, many MOBAs have died though.
They have died, but that's because they just weren't as good as League, right? It's just that simple.
Well, yeah, but that's an oversimplification, right? Other MOBAs die for many reasons, right? So they don't. The
Heroes of the Storm.
I think a large reason as to why League has survived is because of the amount of effort Riot put towards it. It's their flagship game. Like, the reason Heroes of the Storm died is because Blizzard have too much on their plate, right? They just didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's very multifaceted, right? You have the rank system in League for the most part is the matchmaking, and like that whole thing is really good. You have Rioter constantly updating the game and making changes
and listen to the community
and listen to the community, but also as well, like their champ designs were just really good, like just in general.
It's a better product, right?
Yeah, fun champions. I mean, everything. It's not just any one thing, right? It's the culmination of many small things.
I think a big part is that they set the precedent that there's patches no matter what. I think is an important thing. So it's not like when a patch comes in, it's like they're in oh shit mode. We have to change something. Everyone's getting bored. It's like we patch anyway. Even if the game's in a great spot, we're still going to patch. So no one's surprised. I think that's a big part of it.
That's true. That's actually a really good point.
Okay, so going back to sort of the initial question, we sort of got talking about why League hasn't died, but I guess it sort of comes into this, is why do people hate competitiveness in games? Video games specifically.
But I want to frame this a different way, right? Because if you think about games, it's it's an umbrella term, right? Games could be anything from a game of Uno on this paper, like card game, to a game of chess, to a game of Fortnite or whatever. It could be anything. I mean, games could be literally, or we can be literally an IRL game. We could play hide and seek. We could go play tag or some shit. We could play paintball. These are all games, right? Like they're all games if you think about it.
Yes.
So games, this all-encompassing term. Now, if we would, again, put some very loose categories, you have games that are competitive. You have games that are maybe less so. And I would say maybe it's on a scale. You have games that are somewhat competitive, and you have games that are ultra competitive, and you have games that maybe are very little competitive aspect. Like,
using your terminology of games, if we think about humans in history, the answer to why do people hate competitiveness in games, they don't. They love competitiveness in games. That's why League's like one of the biggest games.
Games are actually really
embedded in our culture.
There's a guy in my Discord. He works in the gaming, and he works as like a game developer, and he knows a lot about like the actual underlying psychology aspect of games. And again, I'm going to paraphrase, but he said something along the lines of like playing the actual act of playing a game is incredibly human. It's like something that we've done for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And now, obviously, the games have changed, right? Whether you have really old school games, back then, like even like in Italy, rather like bocce and in France, those are like really old. These are probably super old games. They're probably like throwing rocks on the ground, right, for thousands of years. I'm assuming, but it's because it allows us to enter this like free flow state where we enter this childlike free flow state where we're detached from the everyday kind of mundane humdrum survival, food, shelter, all that shit. So once you've got that sorted, once you get a lot of that stuff out of the way, like I've got a shelter over my head. I can feed myself. I've got water. I've got a bed. Okay. Well then either, playing games is a very natural kind of progression. It's like a very human part of our existence.
I guess the definition of a game is like playing within a rule set. So it's completely fair. I think that's why we love it as well, because it's just this, it doesn't change. It's like, this is the rules, but the general life doesn't really follow, rules. I mean, it does, sort of does, but people can cheat and all that, but you can't cheat in a game. The rules are the rules. I mean, you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I quit Counter-Strike. One of the big reasons, like cheating in Counter-Strike.
Like you weren't playing.
I wasn't playing a fair game.
Yeah, fair
that's
game.
what ruined PUBG.
Yeah.
Right? PUBG got ruined with cheaters. I mean, that's why cheating is so, like, something that we take for granted in League is that cheating is not really a thing.
No.
I mean, you can have scripts, but it doesn't really change. It is an advantage, I guess, for skill shots, but
you can still win against cheaters.
you can still easily win against cheaters.
There's so few these days.
There's so few.
There used to be a thing with like win trading and scripting, but now this just doesn't exist really, does it?
Which is crazy. Like, we take that for granted. The fact that like there's no cheat, like that's like really, really, really important. But look, I guess to wrap this up, like, I think that it depends on who you talk to. There are people that just aren't overly competitive and don't want to play a competitive game. And I've said this many times on the podcast. When League was initially announced and came out, it was a casual game, right? It wasn't meant to be some crazy hardcore competitive game. It had a bit of a rank system. That wasn't really the focus. It was meant to be a bit of a casual game. It evolved and became a hyper competitive game. For the most part, right? People mostly, I mean, sure, there are casual people who play norms and ARAMs, but for the most part, it is a pretty goddamn competitive game. And I think there's some people that don't like the way League evolved down that ultra competitive route, and they're like, oh, you're a tryhard, you're freezing the wave on your side, you're a tryhard, and it's like, oh, well, that's just the game, man. And those people probably aren't going to like League of Legends, and they're going to probably play a different game. You know what I mean? So you will talk to people that hate that. They just don't like League because it is competitive, and that's where differences come into play.
Yeah. So, yeah, that wraps up that one. Moving on to our next question here from Trevor. The title of this email is, should I change how I queue ranked? Hello, boys at Broken by Concept. I'm curious if I should change how I queue to actual roles. Right now, I'm still fairly new to ranked after playing mostly casual games with higher ranked friends. There's our smurfing thing again. When I started playing League, I quickly became an Aatrox OTP and enjoyed him a lot. Lately, I have not been enjoying playing top lane, as I mainly like playing Lethality Aatrox, and since the removal of mythic items, Lethality Aatrox is just much worse than Bruiser. With that and just top lane feeling bad, I have started to play more than just top with my experience from playing other lanes in casual with my friends. I first switched to mid from top and played Vex and saw a good amount of success with Vex and got to Bronze 4 fairly easily. Once I hit Bronze, I felt a large amount of games not going the way for me or my teammates, with a lot of the time them blaming being filled to a role they don't know how to play. With seeing that, I just started to queue as Phil with my reasoning, being I've played all roles, I'm casual with my friends who are gold plat level players, so I had a decent understanding of those roles and a couple of champions. I knew how to play in the roles. At first, I had quite a rough time and dropped ranked pretty fast from Iron 1 to Iron 3-4. After about a week, I quickly gained all that rank back and I'm sitting at Iron 1 again. Another thing I really enjoyed about League is learning and playing multiple champions, so queuing Phil allows me to do that. I have about 2 or 3 champions I played in each role. In top lane, I play Aatrox Shen mainly, but have multiple others I'm comfortable on. In jungle, I play Udyr and Xin Zhao and sometimes Dinah Wukong. In mid, I play Vex Dinah. I also recently started playing a little Swain. In ADC, I'll play Sivir Caitlyn. As support, I'll play Pyke Rakan. I don't know if queuing as Phil is something that I will continue to show results and is something I should stop and start queuing actual roles again. So reading this, Curtis, this is like what an IM player looks like. I guess this is the reality. This is it. You know, you're playing a bunch of different things and this is how you enjoy the game. Like if you're an Iron and you're let's say starting this podcast and going down the rank journey, this is the people you compete with, and they're relatively easy to beat because they have no champ mastery, right? So I'm sort of just talking it for I thought this was good to pick of like, this is what it will sound, an Iron player would sort of sound like people struggling in Iron Bronze. So I guess sort of, is it easy to answer this question? It's like, depends what you want to get out of the game, how you should change queue ranked. If you want to stay Iron and Bronze and, go down the fill route, go for it. But if you want to get serious, yeah, you should change the way you queue ranked.
I think a big way he's phrased this, he said like, I play, and then he listed 11 champions that he said he knows how to play, right? I think you just don't know how to play those champions, unfortunately, and that's like a tough pill to swallow. But it's pretty much impossible to play that many champions at a competent level,
especially when you're that new at the game.
100%.
You don't even know the game yet.
I think it's a fair question to ask, but I think he just needs to raise the standards of what it means to actually be good at a champion. Like, just knowing what its kit does and, like, knowing how to pilot it at, like, a reasonable level, that's not really enough to climb the ranked ladder. You really need to start, like, specializing a lot more. So, no, Phil won't get you results, but if he enjoys playing Phil, then, yeah, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, I will just say something I've noticed in the wider League community is people still to this day massively disrespect champ mastery because it's hard to mentally reconcile missed opportunities, right? Because that's what champion mastery really is, right? Champion mastery really, if you have champion mastery, you're seeing and being able to execute upon more opportunities than if you didn't, right? So in his mind, he's thinking, there is this person in front of my face. I'm able to press my QWER button and kill this person.
I'm doing good. I know how to play.
I know how to play the champ. But in reality, you're missing 1,000 opportunities, before that point, or many other ways you could have played all these situations.
And even the way you're killing them, you're not killing them as efficiently as possible. You're missing damage.
Exactly right. But those missed opportunities, for some people, it's hard for them to understand. Maybe they've never achieved mastery in another complex skill before. Maybe this is their first kind of major hobby that they've really pursued mastery in. So look, that's just my observation. So I can empathize with that. And League is one of those games where it's like, you just don't know what you don't know. And you need to just have faith and have a deep respect for the game. And it's like, if I was to put, I guess, all my attention on this champion, I'm just gonna trust these guys that there's gonna be a shit ton of learning to be had.
And I'm probably missing a lot.
And I'm probably missing a lot.
Problem solve that and figure that out and be critical of my gameplay.
Exactly. So just have a crack. Again, echoing what Nathan said, do what you want to do, but you're missing out on a lot.
All right, next question here comes from Tanoshi. The title of this email is Even 3 Games Can Be Sometimes Pretty Hard. Hi guys, big fan of the podcast. EUS jungler here hovering around Gold 1 platform. Recently, I started trying to follow the process that you guys described with the 3 blocks and noticed a problem. There are some days when I come back pretty late in the evening, homework, after gym, whatever. Since I try to still follow the 3 block, I force myself to still play out at least 2 to 3 games. This leads to me making pretty stupid mistakes, autopilot, and miss things that I usually wouldn't. Would you say that it's better to still play out these games even if I will be playing worse? Maybe go on a second account on days like these or even skip. Thanks in advance, Tanoshi.
So what he's saying there is that he has these days where he's just really exhausted and he can't play 3 games. Is that?
That's right.
That's right. I mean, something that you need to understand is that you don't need to be playing at 100% intensity to get value from your games. Sometimes just getting in the reps at 75% intensity is more than enough.
And that's also a powerful mindset as well, because people get into this trap where they feel like if they're not fully ready, they can't play ranked, and they're turning ranked into this massive event. We, all 3 of us, have climbed and improved from League by like pissing away thousands of games where we would not play in high intensity. That's just part of it, really. Because you can't expect to be playing at 100% all the time.
No one
right?
is.
No one is.
is.
No one ever has done that to get to rank 1 or whatever.
So it's like, yes, you do need to try and have the intent to maximize your intensity and try your best and do what you can. But the reality is that, again, you control what you can control. Now, that begs to differ. Is there ways that you can, increase your energy levels at a particular time, whether by caffeine or eating better or sleeping better, or reducing carbs in the middle of the day, whatever the hell it might be? If you're really that passionate about it, you can do that. But at the end of the day, a lot of us are playing at low intensity because we all have lives. League is a hobby for 99% of the population, right? They're just going to play their game that they love, they enjoy. It's their competitive outlet, whatever reason it is. And they have a job, or they study full time, or whatever the hell it is. So most of us are playing with very low subpar intensity.
That's what I was going to say. You'd be surprised at the average intensity level of the average solo queue player. Like,
even Master tier players,
100%.
Grandmaster.
Like, I also think there's like, it's like a muscle, right? You can learn to play with low intensity and just kind of embrace what that feels like, and just, it's fine. You're not going to be an athlete performing at your max competition day every day, right? It's just unacceptable. It's unrealistic for that to happen.
Exactly right. So I just remember about just having a crack, going out, do what you can. And look, I would actually say one last thing here. Be adaptable with your process. And the days where you feel super high energy and you're killing it, play a 4-game block. You could even stretch to a 5-game block if you really wanted to. But 4 games, I recommend a lot of people do this. Stretch your 3 block to a 4 block. And then the days where you're feeling shit, you're really, really exhausted, do a 2-game block. And then it evens out anyway, or average out. You have the 4-game blocks and you have the 2-game blocks. For the most part, it's as if you're playing a 3-game block the entire week.
Yeah. You don't have to follow a rule where it's like, let's say you write this email and I'm expecting Nathan or Curtis to give me a rule. It's like, okay, if you're not feeling bad, never play that 3rd game, right? It's like, no, be adaptable. Sometimes do it, sometimes don't.
Yeah.
It's all, what you feel and what sort of works for you.
Exactly right. And you got to remember, what we talk about when we talk about the process, we talk about 3 blocks and this whole thing. This is like a really kind of like, imagine it as the starting block, and you can customize it however you want. Right? As long as you understand the fundamentals of the process. What are the fundamentals? You don't want to mindlessly spam games. You want to probably review some of them. And you want to have some sort of like a mechanism whereby, you're not going to just mindlessly play, degenerate amounts of hours. Right? That's like the main reason. So we can at least, we're going to have some sort of intensity. We're going to have some sort of a rough process, and you're not going to be addicted. You're not going to be super addicted to the game. That's kind of what we're doing here. So you can make of that as you will. You need to customize that and find what works for you. So, yeah.
I'd also say that if you actually can't fit the 3 games into your schedule, because I don't know what he's saying there in his schedule, like If you're coming home from work and you're going to the gym, you're getting home, you need to make dinner, and then you don't have time for 3 games, don't force the 3rd game.
Just play 2 and don't review then.
That's fine.
You know what I mean? Like,
'Cause
cut out the reviews. Honestly, it's better to play than not than you know. Like,
the mentality of squeezing in a game, I know you guys understand this as well. When you try and squeeze in that game, it never feels
Yeah, it's
good.
not a good idea.
So that's the difference. There's like a low intensity game where you have time, but you're a bit tired. But then there's squeezing in a game, and never squeeze in a game. That's not good. It doesn't lead to good results because you're like, what it implies is you're sacrificing something else in your life that you're not fully comfortable to do. You know, so either set aside the time and do it, or don't.
Great. All right, well, that wraps up our episode today, everyone. Episode 227. Once again, podcast evolving. There might be a completely new setup next week. You never know. It's like an exciting TV series. You never know what's on the next episode, you know? I could be switched on the other side sometime, and then people just will not watch this. Unwatchable. Good work, guys. Let's keep on improving. 3-block process. We'll see you guys next week.